New polling from the Texas Politics Project at UT Austin shows President Donald Trump's approval rating among Texans took a dip for the third straight time. Dr. James Henson, director of the Texas Politics Project, is joining us live to talk about these findings. Dr. Henson, thank you for your time.
Great to be with you, Ashley.
You know, my first question to you is always the same. When did you talk to folks? Who did you talk to? How'd you collect this data?
Yeah, we talked to 1,200 registered voters between, I think, June 6th and the 17th, about thereabouts, and contacted people over the internet, and then made sure our sample was representative using weights with a margin of error of about 2.83%.
Right. You know, President Trump consistently has strong support among Texas Republicans. So tell us about these latest numbers on his job approval rating.
Well, you know, the headline that a lot of people have seized on is a fair one, that President Trump's approval number is now underwater for the first time in Texas. 44% approved, 51% disapproved, -7. That's a decent shift from April when he was 47-46. Now he's still holding on to Republicans pretty well. His approval rating around among Republicans, 87%. That's still, very strong, certainly stronger than anyone else in Texas. But more attrition among independents, a little attrition among everybody, I think, given concerns about the economy and the way that the Trump administration has handled it.
Yeah. You know, the president's approval rating is obviously really important to Texas Republicans, right? They're often vying to get his endorsement, and we've got a lot of hot races that are already shaping up for the primary.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so I think one of the things that's going on here is that, we may see signs of slight weakening for the president, but his endorsement is still golden going into the 2026 election. And the fact that he's showing signs of weakness but isn't weak by any means is difficult for Republican candidates.
Yeah. You know, your team also asked voters how they feel about the job Governor Greg Abbott and the job Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick are doing. What did you learn there?
Yeah, like Trump, most of the elected officials saw their numbers dip right now, which I think is a sign of the general environment and the uncertainty out there. Governor Abbott, dipped back down into negative territory, 41 approved, 45 disapproved. That's more or less the band he's been in. But on the low end, down from 44 approved, 43 approved, 43 disapproved in April. Lieutenant Governor Patrick, farther underwater, 30 approved, 42% disapproved. He was 36 in April. Both of them doing fine among Republicans, in particular Governor Abbott, 77% approval rating among Republicans, below that Trump level. Lieutenant Governor Patrick, a little more negative, 59-14 among Republicans. Now, you have to allow for the fact that fewer people know who the lieutenant governor is than the governor, but still, that's really not a great number for the lieutenant governor going into this big conflict over the THC bill with the governor.
Yeah, especially when you think about all the bills that the Senate made a priority and passed. I mean, you say people may not recognize him, but his name has certainly been in the headlines as of late with us being in the session, and he and the governor very publicly at odds right now, right? The legislature passed a total ban on THC products. The governor vetoed that bill in the literally 11th hour. You asked folks what they thought about that THC ban. What did they say?
Well, when we asked people whether they supported or opposed to outline these products, only 31% supported, more than half, 53% opposed. I think particularly interesting is the close divisions among Republicans. As you might imagine, more Republicans, 46%, supported the ban than opposed it, 39%, but 46-39 with, the rest not knowing is a pretty close split among Republicans. And I think that's one of the reasons that this issue, got Governor Abbott's attention, that he gave a lot of thought to whether he should sign or veto this bill.
Yeah. By and large, though, you found that a lot of voters do agree with most of the top priorities that were passed by lawmakers this past session.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to point out, and I think you and I have talked about this in the past. We've got all these issues that are very divisive that Republicans and Democrats disagree on, yet if you look at the top 5 tier, when we asked people whether they supported or opposed or approved or supported or opposed what the legislature was doing in key areas, in some of the areas that were priorities of virtually all the leadership, there was real bipartisan support. Bipartisan support for spending more on water, for creating the Dementia Prevention Institute, for increasing funding for public education, for lowering property taxes. All of those things are issues that candidates can campaign on in the fall, but they've got to get through the Republican primaries where these more divisive issues have a lot more truck.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out. Dr. James Henson, director of the Texas Politics Project, we thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Love talking to you, Ashley. Take care.